Hey guys, what's up? It's Erica. Welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, please make sure to subscribe. It really helps me out. I'm going to be posting every single day for the month of February. In today's video, I am joining BookTube. I am going to be talking about the 5 best and 5 worst books I read in 2021. 2021 was the first year that I really gotten into reading for fun and enjoyment. I read 14 books. 15 if you include the one that I didn't fully read, which I will be talking about. So I know that's not like a ton, and so almost every book that I read is either going to be on the good or bad list. And honestly, how I'm making the good or bad list is just for me personally. I realize that I like books that have a meaning and that stick with me, because there are books that I've read months ago and I think about them almost every single day. Just about like a quote, the way it changed the way I looked at life or situations, which honestly I almost feel like making this list like helped me realize what books and like what genre of books I actually really enjoy. Because for TV, I love true crime. That is my favorite, and I have not enjoyed any mystery or true crime book that I've read. I feel like when I'm reading, I'm honestly looking to learn something or to have like a really deep or meaningful, thought-provoking book. Also, I feel like to explain why I like or dislike a book, there might be some spoilers, but I will try not to be too explicit. If you really don't like spoilers, then just don't watch this video. So I'll just go back and forth between best and worst books. So the first book I want to talk about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo. I could not put that book down. I've seen so many people talk about it on TikTok, and I think it's totally worth the hype. Even though I do find that book is really hard to like relate to, because most of us are not movie stars in the 50s. Honestly, like the main character can be kind of harsh and like not always make choices that probably a lot of us would make. There's just a lot of elements to it that I loved. I think it's really interesting to think about like movie stars in the 50s and like that time period, because Hollywood and people being on TV and stuff was like just beginning. It's such a crazy concept, because I feel like in our day and age, like there's so many famous people and like I can just put content out like this, but less than 100 years ago, unless you were in a theater or on Broadway or in like a silent film, you weren't famous. Or I guess if you were like a politician, or I don't really know, but it's just not the same as it is now. It's also just interesting to see how she's able to manipulate the media and her perception. Also, there's just a really, really good love story in it. This book like made me tear up multiple times. I honestly recommend everyone to read this book. It's just a good book. Then on my worst list, number 1 is going to be so controversial, because I know people love this book, but it is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I didn't like this book, possibly because I read It Ends With Us, which is another one of her books, which I will be talking about, and that's in my best list. I read It Ends With Us before I read Ugly Love, and so I had such high expectations for another Colleen Hoover book. I was just ready to literally be destroyed. I wanted my world to be rocked, and it wasn't. I also felt like that the plot just really followed like the same ups and downs as It Ends With Us. I don't know, I was like, you really did something with your other book, and this one, like, you're trying to do something with it, but it's just not the same in my opinion. It was just really cliche. Also, something that really bothers me in books and just like TV shows and media is just like how much people like romanticize chasing after somebody who like says they don't want you or don't want to be with you, and then like the girl somehow obviously convinces him and they like end up happy. But honestly, I feel like that's not a good message to put out there. Just like chasing after wanting to change someone to want to be with us or something. I also feel like that Miles, who is like the guy in the book, was like excused for treating Tate, who's the main character. He was like somehow excused from treating her badly because like of his past and his hard life and whatever. But obviously people love this book because I've seen so many people talk about it online. Colleen Hoover's a really good writer, but it just wasn't what I was hoping it was going to be. I think I just went in and had too high of expectations. So the next one on my best list is The Midnight Library. This book is something that really changed my perspective. Some of these books on my list, honestly, as I was reading them, I might not have been like, oh my gosh, this book, I can't put it down or anything. I wouldn't say like as I read this book, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I think about the book still. Like, I talk about it a lot. I'm like, oh my gosh, this really changed the way I view situations in life. Basically, the biggest thing that I learned from this book is just when you look back and like wish that you did something different or wish that you like did something else, that every choice you make not only affects you and your future, but other people. For example, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but basically the book is about this girl who is in this sort of purgatory, and she gets to explore different versions of her life if she would have made different choices. So she's able to try on different lives because she has a lot of regrets. One of them, for example, is that she wishes she didn't quit the band that her and her brother were in, because like her brother's mad at her because she quit the band. But in the life where she didn't quit the band, her brother dies from an overdose because the fame got to him. So like she was able to see that life and realize, I'm glad I made the choice that I made, because in the life that I had, my brother was alive. Then the next book on my worst list is Gilead, which is the book I did not finish. I was a part of a book club, so this was one of the books that we were supposed to read, and I just could not finish it. This book follows like some stories of a father and a son, and I know that this is like genuinely a good book. I feel like this is a book you would be forced to read in English class. So it's not a book that I would really want to spend my time reading. It was just not an easy read. It was very just like dense. I mean, I couldn't finish it. So the next book on my best list is Tribe. This book is really different than the others. This focuses on like a lot of studies on humans and their relationships and happiness, mental health issues, and this is a book that I think about and reference a lot in my daily life. This book focuses on that humans are meant to live in tribes. We're so selfish, so just like everything is I, and that creates a lot of unhappiness. There are just some really good examples with veterans coming home from war talking about PTSD and people living in war-torn countries. A lot of humans look back on really negative shared experiences, but they look back on them as good, happy times because we need to experience things together. There's a lot of disconnect when you as a family go off and you all live your separate days and you come home and you feel really misunderstood and nobody knows what like you did and what you went through. There's no shared experience. And that was a big thing with veterans, talking about World War II veterans, how when they came back, so many men were out at war, that when they came back, there were a lot less mental health issues because people just understood what the others went through because they were all there. And also the perception veterans came back from World War II, they were heroes. I mean, it's also more complicated than that, and the author does get into that about in World War II and past wars people were drafted, and in more recent years and in more recent wars, a lot of times our soldiers are people who have signed up to be in the military, and a lot of times people who sign up to be in the military are from abusive or unhappy or low income houses and who might already have trauma and issues that can lead to mental health issues. There's obviously not one right or wrong answer. It's a really complicated thing to delve into, but something that I did not know about at all were the accounts of when Europeans were coming to America. There were Europeans who would run off with the Native American tribes, and they did not want to go back to the Western world. Our history is so whitewashed. We have been taught that like the Western ways are the civilized ways and they're better, but there's accounts from Benjamin Franklin being amazed that there were English men that wanted to join the Native American tribes and were happier and were running off to go be with them. So it really just focuses on we as a human species have just like evolved just to be so selfish and to think about I, and that we need to think about we to be happy. But how do you really do that when we've all been kind of raised in the society we've been in? Then the next book on my worst list is Conviction. Conviction's kind of like a mystery novel, and I really do like love mystery and true crime. And this book was definitely like good, but it was kind of just like, okay, I read it and nothing stuck with me. Kind of just felt like mindless consumption of a book almost. I really don't have much to say about it, so that's why I put it on my worst list. Then on my best list, I have It Ends With Us. This book and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo were my favorites of 2021. It Ends With Us is such a good book. It begins, the first half of the book is so cliche. Really, the book makes you look at domestic abuse and domestic violence in such a different way. The author makes you fall in love with Ryle, who's one of the main characters, and like, he's a doctor, he's good looking, he comes from this amazing family, and he's for the most part a really good guy, and he has some really dark moments with Lily. And literally as the reader, I read those pages and I was like, I just want to pretend like those pages didn't happen. Like, you're actually like, I wanted them to be together. Honestly, I feel like everyone who's read that book reads those pages is thinking like, oh, like I know you shouldn't be with Ryle, but like I want you to be with Ryle, and like, I think he's a good guy, and oh, this is just like maybe a one-time thing. It's a really good insight into how complicated it can be to be in a situation like that. And also there is a love story with another guy in the book, and that's pretty sweet. I sobbed after reading this book. Like, I was ruined. This is what the expectation I had for Ugly Love was. It ends with us. Literally, I could not talk about it without crying. Honestly, I feel like everyone should read the book. I know it's probably like a traditional girly romance book, but if you could get past that and like see beyond that, it's a really good book. Then the next book on my worst list were We Were Liars. This was another kind of mystery book. I had seen a lot about this book online. I hated the style of writing. There were these really short, matter-of-fact sentences, and I just found it really annoying to read. I will just read you guys like the smallest little excerpt of the book because I don't really know how to explain the style of writing. This is from the first page. Welcome to the beautiful Sinclair family. No one is a criminal, no one is an addict, no one is a failure. The Sinclairs are athletic, tall, and handsome. We are old money Democrats. Our smiles are wide, our chins square, and our tennis serves aggressive. The family calls us the Liars, and probably we deserve it. We are all nearly the same age, and we all have birthdays in the fall. Most years on the island, we've been in trouble. I don't know, I don't like that. I was somewhat invested as I was reading it. The big plot twist, I feel like it's been used before. It was kind of like Charlie St. Clair or Safe Haven, if you've seen those movies. I think those are also books. That's pretty much all I have to say about that one. I think it was mostly the style of writing that bothered me, and I know it was like an emotional book for some people, but it just wasn't for me. Then the last book on my best list is Resistance Women, which is a book that I think everybody in high school should read. It should be a book in our like high school system. This book follows the lives of multiple women living through, I think, like 1929 to 1946. Mostly taking place in Germany. And most of the characters were actually real people, and the author used like their letters and journals to create dialogue and everything. It is a really, really eye-opening book. One of the women that they follow is Martha Dodd, who was a real person. She was the daughter of the US ambassador who was serving in Germany at the time. Growing up in the United States, learning about US history, we have 100% completely glorified the US. We like to think that we are the saviors, we come in and just save everyone, but it's just really not true. In this book especially, with the US ambassador, she talks a lot about her dad, and her dad was writing letters back to the US and the president and visiting and saying, we need to step in, like things are happening in Germany, this is not okay. He became physically ill because he was so sick, because he was seeing what was happening and the US refused to step in. And I feel like a lot of times I grew up with this impression that like, oh, like we didn't really know what was happening and that's why it took so long, but like that's not true. The book highlights a lot of really brave women who stepped up and who knew what was happening and who knew what was wrong and risked their lives and their safety. It's a heavy book, it's a long book, but it is a really, really, really good read. Then the last book that I have on my worst books is The Rosie Project. I actually did like this book. I think it's a cute book. There's actually 3 books in this series. I've read the first 2. The author never explicitly says it, but the main character in the book has autism, and it is the most stereotypical, over-portrayed version of autism. He's a male, super awkward, and kind of a loner, really good at math and science. Honestly, that was the reason why I put it on one of the worst books, just because that portrayal of autism has been done time and time again. Obviously, there are some people who do fit that stereotype. There's a whole bunch of different personalities and different types of people who have autism and who are not represented, and just like constantly playing into this one stereotype can be really detrimental. And it's just, I mean, I know that this book was written like 10 years ago, so I feel like people were less woke about this type of stuff. Yeah, that's just why I put out my worst, because I haven't read the 3rd book, and the 3rd book I think was written more recently, so hopefully he does a better job at like debunking certain things and just not constantly playing into stereotypes. But it is a super easy, cute read, so if like you're into that, go for it. Those were my best and worst books that I read in 2021. Let me know if you guys read any of these books, what you think about them, if you completely disagree with my assessment on them. And also let me know if you guys want me to do more of these, because I actually loved doing this video and talking about all the books that I read. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow in my next video.